Today, we're diving into a hot topic brewing in Miami, Florida. It seems the celebration of Black History Month at iPrep Academy is stirring up some controversy. But here's the kicker. Parents are being asked to sign permission slips for their children to participate in educational programming related to Black History Month. Yep, you heard that right. Learning about Black history is so dangerous, you need a permission slip to participate. In a time where discussions about parental rights in education are heating up, this move has sparked concern among parents and school officials alike. So grab your popcorn because we're about to unpack the drama surrounding this unexpected permission slip saga. This story was from Patch.com in Miami, published February 8th, 2024. As usual, I'm going to have a lot to talk about, but I thought I'd hand it off to Kelly first. What are your thoughts, Kelly?
Oh, I have so many thoughts about this. So first off, what's next? Are we going to need parental permission to learn algebra? Because, that was invented by Arabs, spread around by Arabs. We're going to need permission to learn about the Great Wall of China or the history of India. Do we need permission to teach Jewish history? I'm really curious here. Where are we going to draw this line, lad? What if I don't want my kids to learn anything about French history? No Napoleon, right? Can I, as a parent, opt out of my?
Well, he was a short nerd.
Yeah, right. How can I opt my kids out of that? I don't want them learning about short nerds. A lot of science is done by brown people and by Asian people. So am I going to have to give them permission to learn science as well? Yeah, and that guy that invented the computer, that Babbage guy, he was a foreigner too. So maybe I need to give permission to teach computer sciences. This is ridiculous. It's like I don't even know how to react to something so silly, except that the school doesn't know how to react to it either. That was the crazy thing about it. And I think we'll get into more of that. I think Cross-Examiner is probably going to talk about more of that. But let's pass it over to Helen and see what she has to say first.
Okay, so we talked about LGBTQIA discrimination. So the fun, let's add some racism to the shitbag, everybody. So here we are. And I am really glad that the Department of Education in Miami-Dade and some parents were like, hey, not cool. This is not okay. I think that's really, really important because yes, you have to follow the law, which is understandable. But learning about Black history, which is American history, is too sensitive because it might make somebody uncomfortable. Like I have problems with that a lot because I learned about terrible things that happened when I went to history class, and I turned out okay, everybody. So you can feel bad. It'll be fine. You can, get an emotional support animal. It'll be great. So, and I have said on the show before, and I will say again, I am very glad that my kids are now out of the Florida school system before everything went to crap, because I don't have to sit there and wonder if this comes into my county and be like, do I have to worry, like, if I want my kids to learn Black history, I have to sign a goddamn note. It was just sensitive topics would, I was growing up, if there was a sensitive topic that was going to come up, especially when it had to deal with sexual nature, they would just tell parents, hey, we're going to be teaching, reproduction, going through puberty. If you're going to opt out for your child not to take this class, you can do that, but also understand that we're going to give extra work for your kid, some other, you're not going to get the videos, but you will be learning the same info, just not in a graphic way. Basically, and I was in Catholic school, y'all. So now that people are just like, well, it's Black History Month, let's talk about Black history, the tragedies and the triumphs of both. Let's have that conversation. They're like, yeah, no, this might make my kids feel bad, and let's write a note home to make sure that we, how this thing's going to work. And there's more nuance to this conversation and more going on with this article, but we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to shoot it over to Eli and talk about how that shittery is all kinds of silly.
So I did kind of wonder, and somewhat to your point as well, you talked about they have to follow the law. And I did wonder a little bit, is maybe there's so much going on in the legal landscape of education in Florida right now that iPrep Academy is just like, let's just make sure that we're doing this correctly. But I think it was a bad choice I don't think it was necessary to make this a better safe than sorry moment for this particular topic, just for teaching Black history. It does seem like the Florida Department of Education is trying to separate themselves from it a little bit, and rightly so. The article cites the department as claiming that direct quote, any insinuation that students need permission to study African American history is a lie. And given some other things we're talking about this week on this show, that doesn't seem completely consistent with the reality of Florida right now. But like you said, Kelly, why can, you mentioned Great Wall of China and, algebra and things. Why can they teach about ancient Babylon, ancient China, Egypt, just like it's any other lesson, or the Holocaust even, without special permission? But actual significant people in American history require special permission to learn about just because they were Black. This whole idea is just absolutely insane to me. And
pigmentation matters, Eli. Pigmentation matters.
Yeah. So, and that's all it seems to be. It seems to be the defining variable here. And I wonder, was this just the school's attempt to make sure they're falling within the confines of their ever changing, whatever is going on in their education laws? But I just don't think this was the right time to play it safe in that way. Cross, what do you think?
Well, there's a couple of facets here from a legal perspective. So first of all, let's be clear, this is a public school. So it's called iPrep Academy. That threw me for a loop. I'm like, who cares? If it's a private school, they can do whatever they want as far as they handle the curriculum. But apparently it's a magnet school in Florida. So they're dealing with, elite kids here. But I actually want to start at the end of the story and quote what you quoted, Eli, which was where the Florida Department of Education said that this was a, quote, media-driven lie, and that any insinuation that they need a permission to study African American history is absolute false. I want to break down that statement because I believe this is double speak. What they said here is any insinuation that students need permission to study African American history is absolutely false. But that's not what the permission slip was for. The permission slip was for being taught of African American history. So I'm wondering, hey, if they're saying students can study African American history all they want, but if you're going to attend a presentation on it where you are taught African American history, then you need a permission slip, which that was never denied by the Department of Education. I've not found a story where they said we don't need these slips anymore. In fact, I found a copy of the slip, and on the slip, in case we're wondering, because the story talks about, oh, yes, we are practicing self-defense. A lot of school systems are doing this now. So we have a Holocaust survivor. We're going to have permission slip there, a permission slip there. If somebody from outside of the school is going to come and give a presentation, this permission slip, I'm going to read straight from it. And title is Black History Month Presentations and Readings. Types of guests that may attend the activity or event. And it says student readers, dancers, and presenters, etc. These were students in the school presenting to their fellow students. That's what this was. This was not an outside company that you need a permission slip for. This wasn't a survivor of some traumatic event. This was students talking to their fellow students in an organized fashion, and they demanded a permission slip. So technically what the government said is true, that you don't need a permission slip to study African American history. But I think I've yet to see a correction issued to say you don't need a permission to be taught African American history. So that's point number one. It reminds me of, that doublespeak of a famous skit that was on Saturday Night Live back in the 80s, written by Al Franken. And it talks to this exact point. And it's about President Carter drinks radioactive Pepsi and grows to be like 99 feet tall. And there's a press conference. And the reporter says, Is it true that the president is over 100 feet tall? And the press secretary says, no, absolutely not. That's outrageous assertion. That's slander. And I will not stand for such lies to be spread. And then the reporter says, follow up, is the president over 90 feet tall? No comment. That's what they're doing here. It's like, this is a media-driven lie. And then people ask these follow-up, and it's silence. They haven't withdrawn the slip. So that's the other thing. I have a lot more to talk about, obviously, to go on.
This is all fucking silly.
It is, and it's not.
Like, it is and it's not. Like, I do think it's silly because when I was growing up, I just learned Black history as part of my curriculum. Like, there was no notes sent to my parents' house to be like, your kid's going to learn history. Do you get to opt out? Like, that didn't happen. And now I'm like, really? It's like, is this what we're coming to, people? Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. They're going to keep.
When I was a
sort
kid,
of
Black history was George Washington Carver, and that was it.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget Eli Whitney. You got to have Eli Whitney.
I learned about Harriet Tubman, by the way.
Oh yeah. We need a new Harriet Tubman for an underground railroad to help people like Helen escape out of Florida. That's what
I do. Yes, please do.
So one other quick observation before you reminding me of something, Kelly. It's this sort of BS where the government, the last episode we talked about them putting up a bill to criminalize basically people existing and then sort of letting that die quietly. This where they're saying this is a media driven lie and then there's silence and they don't retract the permission slip and all that stuff. It reminds me very much of the patterns of lies that we see coming from Christian conservatives in the government throughout history, where they lie through omission. And the example I want to give, I did a podcast a while ago on the McDonald's hot coffee case. And one of the things I found was Reagan giving a speech in support of tort reform. And he was speaking to ATRA, this American Tort Reform Association, trying to push through. And it's a real bad idea. When you hear tort reform, it's real bad. It's basically saying we want to take away your right to sue people when they injure you. That's what it means. But in this speech, he said, hey, there was this guy and he was making a phone call in a phone booth when a drunk driver crashed into the phone booth and he sued. Guess who he sued? He sued the phone company. Isn't that outrageous? And everybody applauded and like, oh yeah, we need tort reform. That's crazy. What didn't Reagan, who was president at the time he said this, what didn't he tell you? That the phone company had dozens of reports of cars hitting that phone booth in that exact location, that the phone booth had been damaged and not repaired, and the man could not get out of the phone booth. Multiple witnesses and he testified that they saw him seeing this drunk driver coming for the phone booth. He tried to get out of the door and he couldn't. There were many, many facts like that Reagan left out. This is what the conservatives, Christians, and government do. They tell the truth and leave out all the relevant shit. So they're saying you don't need a permission slip to study, but yeah, you need a permission slip to be taught. And it's all because it's about Black people and we don't like that. Sorry, that's my rant. I just can't stand it when people lie so blatantly and the press does not call them on their bullshit. What are your thoughts, Kelly?
Yeah, it's kind of off topic, but that reminded me of a case that's going on right now. I think it was in Tennessee, where a minister is being sued being harassed by the city with zoning violations because he let homeless people stay in his church. Right. And then when you start reading, well, when you look into the whole thing, that the church was in the back of literally in the back of a game arcade. It was a back room in the game arcade. He was letting people use propane stoves. They had open fires in the back. There was no escape route. If a fire started, the people would have been locked inside. Right. So he went to, but the media puts it out as, oh, minister has homeless people and now he's being harassed by the city. And again, we're missing all the details here and I think we're seeing some of that here. Definitely. Also, I thought, and the first thing that hit me, and it was something we talked about in another story earlier this week, is this overbroad language in some of these bills. And I could see where this school district might be a little afraid about what they are teaching and the state education board could be right, telling the truth. We're not forcing anybody to sign these permission slips, but the school board is thinking, wow, if we don't sign these permission slips, we might end up getting sued, even though the state board is telling us we don't have to do them. We better do it anyway just to cover our butts, right?
We have no reporting that says that the state board actually told the school that. I want to be clear on that. I agree that may be what's going on here. There's no reporting I could find that said that spokesperson, that mouth that got up and said this is a media, like what does our world come to when it's acceptable for a press secretary to get in front and say this is a media spread lie, rather than putting up a chart that says here's the actual rules, we have contacted this person, they shouldn't do this, they have retracted it. That's not what they said. That's what an adult in the room would do, is to say, oh yeah, it was a misunderstanding, here's the problem. Nope, they just said media spread lie, the president is not over 100 feet tall. That's outrageous.
And so, I think too, well, because Helen, you mentioned earlier about, you never know who's going to get offended by what. And then I had a thought kind of related to what I said. Like, I wonder if iPrep Academy is just like, you know what, if we don't do something ahead of time, somebody is going to get offended. Somebody is going to raise a stink. Somebody's going to do something to make this more difficult for us in the long run. If we don't just come out and say, if you don't want your kids to learn about Black history, this is your chance to tell us right now. And then they won't. But they had to do it in this backwards sort of way to be like, so it looks like now you have to give permission, because we want to later be able to say, no, you gave us permission to teach this. We said you gave written consent for your children to learn this lesson. Maybe. And
the fact that attitude's even in the air, the fact that it even occurs to them to think, oh, we're talking about Black history, that's risky. That says everything, that they even have that thought.
Well, look at the book bans. Because a lot of books that got banned were about minority populations. I'm not surprised that this was a step. I don't agree with it, but I'm not surprised, because they're basically like, as Eli was saying, somebody will make it stink. And maybe if we do this, we can avoid some of it, but again, the press picked it up, and here we are talking about it.
what I laughed through Eli's really poignant point, right? And I laughed because I'm inside of my mind, I'm thinking, hey, let's avoid offending somebody by doing something that's really offensive. Right? Because that's what happened, right?
I still maintain this was not the better safe than sorry moment.
Sounds very white people.
I think Kelly is dead on. I actually made notes about this. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up, but since Kelly did, I do want to point this out. So from a legal perspective, if this was the actual policy, which we have not heard that it is not, we haven't heard that it is, it would be most likely held to be unconstitutional. And it reminded me of Chief Justice Warren's opinion in Brown versus Board of Education, which I have spouted on time and time again, but I think it's a Supreme Court opinion. Everybody should go read it. It's very, very short, and it was a unanimous court for a reason. And the basic holding of Brown is separate but equal is wrong, because the reason that you are separated is obvious to the children. And it's not because the blacks don't want to be with the whites. It's because the whites don't want to be with the blacks. And when the law upholds that prejudice, it has this a tendency to denigrate or deteriorate your ability to be educated in school. And I would hold the same thing here. There's a reason the kids in these schools would know, oh, I need a permission slip to learn about Black History Month. Where's my permission slip for White History Year? I don't have to have one of those. And they're smart enough to pick up on that, and they will get the same inferiority complex that Warren wrote about back in the 60s, and why we don't give the government the power to do that to kids. So I agree entirely with you, Kelly. This is
that's a good point. No, that's a good point, because if you're a Jewish kid or a Black kid or a queer kid and whatever it is in school, do you get a permission slip? Do you have to go to your parents and hey, I don't want to learn about, the Revolutionary War, I want to opt out of that. Do I get to do that now? like that's the type of conversation that we're having, and it's because this is racist. Everybody, by the way, I know, shocking, but like I want to read this quote by Dr. Stephen Gallen was in the article as so. Where do we draw the line as it relates to these areas are consistent with instruction? Dr. Steve Gallen's a board member, and he also added, "We understand that at the school district we have to follow law." But we have to clarify about what the intent of the law is. What happens when a parent fails to sign the consent form? Is that student excluded from this experience? Is that student excluded from instruction? Like this is how we get into these, like, sort of debates and, what's the parents want? And I'm sorry, like our education instructors and administrators are already stretched thin. And if a parent fails to sign a permission slip, do you have to track them down and be like, do you want your kid to learn about Black history? Like it's dumb. It's done administered. I don't like it.
And let's not forget where it comes from. Let's not forget where this comes from. The history here is, let's be clear about the history. Obama gets elected. White people freak out. We get MAGA as a racist reaction. We get January 6th, which is a religiously inspired race riot at its core. This is what we're dealing with. And then we get the press, the conservative press, screaming about critical race theory, which is kind of evaporated out of the zeitgeist over the last couple of months. But that's where this comes from. This is a child of that entire process to say, and now it's going to hit the streets in real ways where we're saying, okay, teaching you about Black history is dangerous. So we need your parents to give you permission. Why is it dangerous? Because our precious little white kids might somehow feel guilty because this smells like critical race theory. That's where this all comes from. And that's all sort of missed in this coverage because it comes down to, well, do we need a consent form or not? The fact that the school even thought that might be needed comes from this entire conservative game plan to put racism back into the nation's oxygen. And unfortunately, they've succeeded in that.
So on that note, you do not need permission unless you want it. I'm not going to kink shame to click on another video. So, do it over here or do it down here, whatever you want, like consensually push a video.